Well, I was walking in Portsmouth this last week, and I saw a sign in a shop window, or actually, maybe I should say a store window. And it was a long, handwritten sign on a big, what looked like a big piece of slate. And I read this sign, and I went in and spoke to the young woman at the counter of the shop and said, do you have something somewhere, do you have a card or something which has what's in the window on a, that I could buy? And she said, no, I'm sorry, we don't. She said, but if you Google the paradox of our time, you'll be able to get it on the internet. And I said to her, it's good, isn't it? And she looked at me rather wistfully, and she said, it is good. She said, but it's sad that it's true. So I did go home, and I did do some Googling, and I found the paradox of our time, which has been variously attributed to George Carlin and the Dalai Lama. Interesting combination. It was actually written by a minister in Seattle called Bob Moorhead. And I just wanted to share a little bit of it with you as we reflect on this gospel story, as well as what Paul was saying to the Colossians, and indeed what the psalmist has written, all things kind of coming together this morning to focus our minds. So a brief part of the paradox of our time. The paradox of our time in history is that we have taller buildings but shorter tempers, wider freeways but narrower viewpoints. We spend more but have less. We buy more but enjoy less. We have bigger houses and smaller families, more conveniences but less time. We have more degrees but less sense, more knowledge but less judgment, more experts, yet more problems, more medicine, but less wellness. We drink too much, smoke too much, spend too recklessly, laugh too little, drive too fast, get too angry, stay up too late, get up too tired, read too little, watch TV too much, and pray too seldom. We have multiplied our possessions, but reduced our values. We talk too much, love too seldom, and hate too often. And I was struck by the fact that the young woman in the shop had found something really resonated with her about these words. So I decided to conduct some further investigations, and I printed out copies for all the 20-somethings that were gathered at my house last night to see what they thought about this. And there was a difference of opinion. They didn't really buy into it in the same sort of way that this young woman seemed to, that I spoke to earlier in the week. But what there was a consensus that material acquisition did not bring spiritual well-being, even though this particular cohort of 20-somethings considered that this generation is better off than any previous generation, and there isn't one that they would go back to. I was kind of encouraged by that. But the biblical truth that we've heard in the gospel today holds: one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. In our gospel reading today, the rich man was not, as far as we know, unkind to his workers, false in his accounting, or dishonest in his business practices. But he was greedy. And as Paul notes in his letter to the Colossians, greed is idolatry. We worship that which is not God. In some translations, the word is covetousness, a desire to have more. And one commentator wrote that it is the insatiable desire to have more, where goods become our gods. Goods and other good things can get in the way of our relationships with each other and our relationships with God. The busyness of life keeps us from nurturing our relationships, all of our relationships. And all relationships, including our relationship with God, needs time. And after I came across the paradox of our time around the corner, I have had a week where the church family has been hit quite hard by death. And so that's kind of been on my mind and occupied a lot of my time. And the end, I just want to read you a little bit of the end of what was written, because it really resonated with me when we're thinking about how we use God's gifts, not just the possessions, but all gifts, time, talents, etc. Remember to spend some time with your loved ones because they are not going to be around forever. Remember, say a kind word to someone who looks up to you in awe, because that little person soon will grow up and leave your side. Remember to give a warm hug to the one next to you, because that is the only treasure you can give with your heart, and it doesn't cost a cent. Remember to say, I love you to your partner and your loved ones, and to mean it. A kiss and an embrace will mend hurt when it comes from deep inside of you. Remember to hold hands and cherish the moment, for someday that person might not be there again. Give time to love, give time to speak, and give time to share the precious thoughts in your mind. Goods and good things can become gods and get in the way of all of our relationships. And not only that, but Tom Wright, you might think I'm a Tom Wright groupie because I know I talk about him a lot. He was the Bishop of Durham. He now teaches theology at St. Andrews, but he writes wonderful books. And in his book, Virtue Reborn, he talks about becoming like that which we worship, which is to say, if we worship money, we may begin to treat everything, including people, as commodities. If we worship power, we may begin to treat people like pawns in our life, just ladders or rungs on a ladder to somewhere else, and not people. And I was reflecting on the words that are sometimes said or sung at the offertory, not so much at this service, but I trust they will be familiar in any case. They come from the part of the Bible in the Old Testament, 1 Chronicles, where David has to turn over his plans and his wealth to the next generation. He has to turn over his desire to build a temple to his son. And as he kind of does this, he prays a prayer of thanksgiving, which sometimes forms our offertory prayer. I just wanted to read part of it to you. Thine, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. For all that is in heaven and in earth is yours. Yours is the kingdom, O Lord, and you are exalted as head above all. Both riches and honor come from you, and you reign over all. And in your hand is power and might, and in your hand it is to make things great and give strength to all. So therefore, our God, we thank you and praise your glorious name. But who am I, and who are my people, that we should be able to offer this sort of offering? For all things come from you, and of your own have we given you. In the words of David, in the words of the psalmist, who reminds us that the wickedness of those who put their trust in goods and boast of their riches can never ransom our lives. For the ransom of our life is so great that we should never have enough to pay for it. And that everything we have and everything we can offer is from God. We had a family gathering last night, and one of the things that we did in addition to debating the paradox of our time was to think about New Year's and how there are different points in every year that can be a new year, a new start. And that can be the 1st of January, all those resolutions that kind of tend to go out the window after a week or so. I don't think January is a good time to make resolutions personally. They've never succeeded very well for me then. The church calendar starts with Advent, often around the first Sunday in December. So that's a good kind of new year. But I think for many folk, whether you're in church or school or have folk in your family in school, September is like a new year. It's a new beginning. And it's a marvelous time to kind of take stock, I think. So I thought, as it's August and September is on the horizon, it would be a good time to invite us as a family of faith to think about our new year and all that we have, all that we are, being a gift from God. And that we're not to possess, but rather we are to steward those gifts. And they could be gifts of talent, they could be gifts of time, they could be possessions, it could be money. And as we come into this new year at St. John's, the program year of 2013-2014, I'd like us to consider how God is calling us to use everything He has given us. And in the words of the Book of Common Prayer, so that we can show forth His praise, not only with our lips, but in our lives.